Trump won't fail into the trap of endless negotiations, and the Kremlin won't be able to mislead everyone. Statements by the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio clearly show that Washington's patience is not limitless. After the NATO Foreign Ministers Summit, Rubio emphasized that Ukraine has shown a willingness to negotiate while Moscow continues to stall, make new demands, and claim that the Trump administration allegedly doesn't consider Russia's interests.
The Russians know our position in terms of wanting to end the war, and we will know very soon if they are serious about pursuing real peace or if this is a delaying tactic. If it is a delaying tactic, Trump is not interested in that. We will know soon enough if Russia is serious about peace. If they are, that will be great. Then we can move towards peace.
For the next round of negotiations with the Americans, Putin sent the head of the Russian investment fund, Kirill Dmitriev. After their meetings, Dmitriev stated in an interview with Fox News that Moscow is open to discussing security guarantees for Kyiv. This sharply contrasts with previous statements by Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Lavrov, who claimed that Kyiv's demand for guarantees, such as presence of Western troops, is unacceptable to Moscow. However, these two key figures of the Kremlin are known to be at odds. Russian opposition media reported that in Riyadh, Lavrov and Dmitriev even had a quarrel over a chair, which surprised the Americans, so it's clear that public statements are now less relevant.
The U.S. is now waiting for Kirill Dmitriev, the Russian negotiator, to report back to President Putin before the two sides move forward with any next steps, according to a person familiar with the talks. American officials have become increasingly frustrated by Moscow's slow walking of negotiations. What appeared to be a breakthrough last week over a partial truce in the Black Sea quickly evaporated after Russian officials said it was contingent on sanctions relief. From Bloomberg Materials.
In Europe, it is believed that Putin's negotiators won't be able to fix the situation. The Kremlin's dictator will continue to claim that he wants peace, but every night hundreds of missiles and drones will continue to strike Ukrainian territory, according to Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs of the UK, David Lammy. Only a strong position by Ukraine, both military and economically, can stop the aggressor.
Putin continues to obfuscate, continues to drag his feet. He could accept a ceasefire now. He continues to bomb Ukraine, its civilian population, its energy supply. We see you, Vladimir Putin. We know what you're doing.
The Trump administration assures that it will respect Ukraine and Europe's positions in negotiations with Russia. This was shared by the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, after a meeting with Marco Rubio. Furthermore, Washington has promised to respect all of Ukraine's red lines. This include first and foremost a strong army and non-recognition of occupied territories as Russian.
It was emphasized that nothing regarding Ukraine can happen without Ukraine. And of course, Ukraine and Europe must come to an agreement on all the issues being discussed, because this is all happening in Europe. So yes, he gave us assurances and guarantees on this matter. Kaja Kallas, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy.
On Monday, Donald Trump announced that he would speak to Putin by phone this week. However, according to the NBC News, several people in his circle are advising against his move. First, the Russian dictator must declare his willingness to completely cease fire in Ukraine, not just say it, but act on it. Only then negotiations continue. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Irina Yusupova, UATV News. Over the past week, Russian forces have struck cities including Kyiv, Kropyvnytsky, Odessa, Zaporizhia, Dnipro, Poltava, Kharkiv, Kryvyi Rih, Sumy, and many other Ukrainian settlements. Civilians have been affected and civilian and energy infrastructure has been damaged.
Our partners must understand that these Russian strikes are not only against our people, but also against all international efforts, against diplomacy, which we are trying to use to end this war. Russia is targeting those who want to end the war. It's impossible to ignore the hundreds of Shahed drones every night. We are expecting a serious response. We are working on it. A strong response is needed, primarily from America, Europe, and everyone in the world who is betting on diplomacy. Russia must be forced into peace, and only force will work.
According to President Zelenskyy, the U.S. proposal for an unconditional ceasefire remains unanswered by Russia for too long. If real pressure had been applied to Russia, a ceasefire could have already been achieved. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine Andriy Sybiha stated that the Russian attacks on Ukrainian cities should be seen as a Kremlin's direct response to U.S. diplomacy.
The Russian drone strike on Dnipro last night killed 4 people and injured more than 24 others, including a pregnant woman. Residential areas are once again being attacked. This is Putin's response to U.S. ceasefire proposals, more war crimes and attacks on civilians. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, on X social network.
The Kremlin intends to continue dragging out negotiations for a temporary ceasefire. That's why Putin has once again claimed that the Ukrainian government is supposedly illegitimate and proposed establishing external governance in Ukraine under the authority of the UN, the US, and the EU. The United Nations, Washington, and Brussels have rejected this proposal and said that the legitimacy of the Ukrainian authorities was beyond question.
Russia, and Putin specifically, as I understand it, have made the decision that as long as they have resources and reserves, they objectively do not want any peace agreements, let alone a ceasefire. The last thing they want is a freeze at the existing front line. When there were talks, they were held.
But when it came to fulfill agreements, Putin began to stall the negotiations, and the Kremlin's propaganda continues to lie about supposed violations by Kyiv. However, Ukraine has hard evidence of Russian strike on energy infrastructure, as stated by President Zelenskyy.
There was a targeted Russian drone strike on the gas infrastructure in Poltava, and an artillery strike on Kherson that damaged the city's electricity infrastructure. One of the Russian strikes on Kharkiv also damaged the city's heating infrastructure. All this shows that Russia will continue to sabotage diplomacy and will do so further. Moscow's only tactic remains to drag out the war. Putin says things that make it seem like he's agreeing with the American side, but in reality, the Russian army continues to press forward with all its military means.
The Kremlin is attempting to undermine the legitimacy of Ukraine's government, believing this will give them the right to violate any agreements, according to analysts at the Institute for the Study of War. Putin does not want an end to the war with Ukraine. On the contrary, he is doing everything to capture as much Ukrainian territory as possible.
The Kremlin continues to hold negotiations hostage and is attempting to extract additional concessions from the West following the progress made in the ongoing ceasefire negotiations. The Kremlin remains committed to its goal to prolong any negotiations for a temporary frontline ceasefire or permanent peace agreement in order to continue making incremental gains on the battlefield and establish favorable conditions to pursue Ukraine's complete capitulation. From the Institute for the Study of War report.
Experts believe that the US and the European Union have real leverage over Russia, primarily in the form of additional sanctions that could inflict maximum damage on the aggressor country's economy, thus forcing Russia into peace. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Natalia Husak, Volodymyr Shtengelyov, UATV News.